Hey folks, Professor Finn here, and this popped in the inbox today. So we're going to take a look at it. And I've got a couple windows here open because I've done a little bit of preliminary research to see what's going on here. So, New York Post writes funeral home ripped off corona victims' prepaid lavish send off, family says, May 2nd, 2020, 922. So clearly, this is fresh off the presses. A British funeral home ripped off a 92-year-old corona victim, her family charged. So, step one, we have a problem. This is the United Kingdom. This is not the United States. Different laws apply. Iris Lawley spared no expense for her final goodbye, prepaying about $5,000 in 2017 for the top tier gold plan offered by Co op Funeral Care, The Sun reported. The pricey package came with a veneer coffin, limousines, embalming, and time in a chapel of rest. Good for her for prearranging to make things simple for her family. That is not an easy thing for many people to do. So certainly, she was very considerate for her family, and I want that to be said. But now Lolly, who died April 14th amid the coronavirus pandemic raging, will be cremated in the pajamas she left her nursing home in a service only 10 mourners can attend. Okay, so we have problem number one. We have to ask ourselves, why is she being cremated rather than buried, and what's going on with the PJs because of embalming? Co-op Funeral Care at first offered Lolly's family a measly $456 refund for the change of plans, according to The Sun. Dude, that's like nearly 10% of the bill, but okay. Lolly's daughter, Carol Winfield, basted the funeral director, saying her dead mother is being ripped off. I'm totally disgusted with the whole scenario, Carol told the newspaper. Co op Funeral Care ultimately refunded Lolly's funeral plan, exchanging it for a simpler package and even throwing in a $312 payment as a goodwill gesture. Um, okay. Okay. A funeral plan is a very special and unique arrangement, and delivering it is one of the last wishes we can grant for our loved ones. Sadly, due to government guidance, we are unable to fulfill some aspects of the late Ms. Lolly's funeral plan, a company representative told The Sun. Winfield is now trying to raise funds to purchase a karaoke machine for the nursing home where her mother lived. She last saw her mom April 14th wearing protective equipment to hold the older woman's hand about an hour before she died. As mom loved music, I want the residents and staff to remember her through singing by purchasing a karaoke machine. Mom would have loved that, she said. Okay, so we're not going to use our usual skeptic critical technique of ripping this article to pieces with humanizing parts, dehumanizing parts, use of certain words in certain places to guide you towards whatever. We're going to focus strictly on what we're given here and try to not take not trash the family, not trash the funeral home too terribly much. The first is, of course, it's very unfortunate for any family to go through a death, and I certainly feel for Ms. Winfield having her mother pass away during the pandemic and being prevented from having services is really, really unfortunate. So let's take a look. The first thing here is Co-op. Found their website. Yeah, it doesn't look like the price has changed much. So about 4,200 pounds sterling. That's about $5,000 US for a gold plan. And what likely happened is when they couldn't do certain things, it got bumped up or bumped down to a simple, and away you go with it. Problems start happening. So the first problem is, why is this happening? Well, they also have a coronavirus section, which I clicked on. We can take some peeks here. And they have a nice little embalming page as to why you should. And I am going to say that if you are able, you really should consider having professional embalming done, because it can be extremely beneficial for the family's mental well-being to see their family professionally prepared by a skilled embalmer. We're going to focus on, though, is the coronavirus section, because there's some important things here. So what we're going to do is we're going to not deal with the fluff, and we're going to go right down here. So the first thing is, and I'm just going to find it because it's easy. What's changed for funeral services? Okay. As we need to follow government advice, it's highly likely the funerals carried out in this time will not be how you or the person who died would have originally have wanted the funeral to be, especially with social distancing guidelines. To maintain our levels of care to clients and colleagues, unfortunately, there are a number of changes that we've had to make to our service. We've taken the decision not to offer embalming at this time, and we're unable to bring the coffin to rest at your home before the funeral. So now we have problem number one. This is a business decision. If someone knows differently, please throw comment and a link in your comment below the video as to where the United Kingdom, either Parliament or someone else, has come out and said absolutely no preparation of dead human bodies to be done at this time. Because if this was a company decision, that's on you folks. The only thing I can tell you is that when you sign up to be a funeral home, it's kind of business as normal, and it is a job hazard that we are at risk for infection when we do things. So certainly, it's your business. You can do what you want, but to not offer any preparation or dressing of any decedent under your care, um, I personally take issue with that. And the next thing, we're unable to take prints for silver fingerprints early if the death is due to coronavirus. Um, that's more understandable. That if it is a confirmed coronavirus case, and you want to limit the exposure, that's one thing. But to not offer embalming at all, you know, okay, your business. Again, your business, not my problem. Um, but I find that to be a bit questionable, especially when the only thing you're going to be doing is refunding them the cost. Although some prefer that their loved one is dressed in their own clothes. We're unable to do that at this time. No, you're not. Um, Plain and simple. No, you're not. Okay, you're choosing to do that, unless the government has stated otherwise. You are choosing to do that. So if the government has not prevented you from doing that, I have a problem with that. There are ways that you can do this safely, and if not, then you shouldn't be in business. I'm sorry. I feel very strongly about that. Church services, the Church of England, Scotland, and Wales, and the Catholic Diocese have stopped taking services or are closed until further notice. So, the churches have come out and said, we're not going to do any services. So, obviously, that's going to impact the funeral business, and that's not their fault. But they've made some decisions here that unless someone out there can provide me a link to Parliament or a municipal government saying you can't do this wherever they're located, this is their decision. And if you folks have personal protection equipment, if you have your topical disinfectants, you really need to understand you're going to get some serious heat from people when you say that you're not going to dress them in their own garments. We're going to use, a high quality dressing robe. It's not the same, especially when everyone else is getting tried by not being able to have services, not being able to do this, not being able to do that. So this is their policy. Okay. This is their policy. And obviously, you're going to have a number of refunds popping up, folks, because you're not providing limos, how many people can attend, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole page here as to what's changed. So the first thing is I will commend them that at least they have this page. Okay, at least they have this page. I'm just, I'm a little in awe at how they've chosen to modify their business. And again, this is, for the protection of their employees. So it's very hard for me not to agree with the protection of people in, the death industry. But there are also some basic service things that we can do that make sense. And, I can understand maybe if you don't want to embalm, but you not dressing, I'm sorry. that just kind of that crosses a line for me personally, and I cannot stay objective with that. That's a little bit too far. So I did do a couple searches for embalming, trying to find anything that said whether or not embalming was prohibited, and I just couldn't find anything. And unfortunately, on this page, there was nothing that brought me to a larger municipal area or anything like that. So it just kind of is what it is. One thing that I'm certain many of you are unaware of is the European Union voted to remove formaldehyde in general from preservatives, and it's a wide mess. But moral of the story is they're not essentially allowed to use formaldehyde-based preservatives, formalin solution, without doing very cost-prohibitive studies and getting permission and stuff like that. So that change probably has had an effect on how they have to approach embalming. And I get that. Okay, I totally get that. That's out of the funeral home's control. And they say you have to use something that's less effective. We know that formalin solution will happily kill coronavirus. It's not a protein-based disease like prion or something like that. And now you're using something else, embalming is likely going to be less effective as a result. So I'm sure that that is one of the things that is going on there. You cannot compare U.S. embalming to embalming within the majority of the European Union because many funeral homes out there are prevented from using formalin solution. So that is one thing that does bear mentioning. Um, Still, topical disinfectants do not contain formalin solution. I'm not seeing why you can't dress people. Throwing that out there again because I just can't let that go. So here in the United States, there are some important things. The first thing is the Federal Trade Commission um, has a piece of has law called the funeral rule, and right now it is going up for another review. If you go on their website and you look to see what they're talking about, they've invited public comments and stuff like that about how we should take this thing going forward. And I'm sure national organizations like the National Funeral Directors Association, National Funeral Directors and Morticians Association are certainly weighing in saying, hey, we should do this, hey, we should do that. For practitioners, you have the compliance guide. In the funeral law classes that I teach, this is one of the mandatory downloads. I recommend this for all practitioners. If you didn't know it exists, you need to. And you can see that this was last updated March 2020. So this is fresh off the presses. Looks like I have to do a comparison because the last time this was updated was a couple of years ago. So this is intended for practitioners, stated in practitioner language, and the consumer may find this a little bit silly or a little bit verbose. If you want me to go ahead and interpret this for you, I can do that. If not, feel free to go back onto the channel and find my playlists, and I have an entire section dedicated to explaining the funeral rule that comes from my college classes. It is the college lecture. The second document is shopping for funeral services, and they have a whole article section on this, which you can see here. And there are numerous things that you can go and look for. Very briefly, what I want to say is when you shop for funeral services, again, you're making a business transaction. And it's hard for us to envision this transaction of a substantial amount of money to be something like a piece of physical property. Every state has different laws regarding how that transaction must occur and how the money has to be stored and protected, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But as a generalized statement, when you pay for the product, and if your state permits you to cancel the product, okay, cancel the contract, you may not necessarily receive back all of your money. Okay. And I am making a very much large oversimplification of things here because this is a complex issue. Even under the state of Florida, this is a complex issue because it depends on how the money is stored, trust versus insurance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing that is generally accepted, that when you show up to make the funeral arrangement, the at-need call, someone has died, and you say, here's their pre-need contract, and I am changing something. I know Dad's paid $15,000 for a full funeral. We don't want that anymore. We want the direct cremation, $695 out the door. Well, in most states where this is permitted, the legally authorized person has the right to make that decision and change the arrangements. The funeral home has the right to charge the modern price. A lot of people find and get quote unquote upset or feel like they've been ripped off when maybe that cremation was $200 20 years ago. And now when they go into the same funeral home, that cremation might be, $1,895, $2,000. And they say, well, Dad only paid $4,000 for a full funeral back in 1985. How come half of that's going to the cremation right now? Because you changed the product. And the funeral home is permitted in most states to charge the modern pricing if you try to cancel the contract and go for something different. So when you're meeting with your funeral providers, have these frank discussions. Don't be surprised that if you purchase something at a funeral home, that you find that you either cannot get a refund on certain merchandise that may be protected under state law or other things. These are questions that you want to ask before you sign the contract. If I cancel in 3 years, what do I get back? what do I lose? My family comes in and they swap to something different. What gets lost in the process? And the funeral director needs to respond in a manner that is professional, giving you the information that they want. I have done numerous pre-arrangement conferences. Um, and at the end of the day, I always tell my client families, if you change something, this can lead to complication. Here's how. If you want to leave a little bit of extra in because some of these non-guaranteed items like cash advances, caterers, death certificates in some areas are cash advance items, we can put in allotments so that way people don't have to spend money. But if you spend $20,000 in a funeral and the family comes in and switches it to something completely different that now costs $8,000, but back in the day only cost $3,000, the funeral home will charge you the $8,000 price. You are changing to something new, and they have a right to charge the prices that they do. And those prices will be disclosed on the forms that are required by the federal and state governments. So, folks, it's truly unfortunate that this family had to go through this. Some of the decisions that Co-op Funeral Care could certainly certainly be different unless there is a legislative reason as to why they can't. I understand the necessity of protecting one's employees. Trust me when I say I understand that. But it does seem that there are some extreme things that they're doing um, to keep their people safe, especially if they do have access to personal protective gear and things of that nature. So, folks, like, share, subscribe. Let me know if there's anything else you want me to discuss. Feel free to send me any sort of articles or tag me something in social media. Always happy to comment and help out. This is Professor Finn, and we will see you next video.